Everyone. Hope people are still coming in, but we are going to jump straight into our training. So I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Miruna. I am the Customer Support and Success Specialist here at Sitebulb. And today we are going to talk about auditing international implementation with Sitebulb. So auditing international websites with different, targeting different locations and different languages. In order to do that, I'm going to give you a quick demonstration of the tool, how to set up your audit, and more importantly, how to analyze the data. So we're going to look at audit settings, which in the case of this report are fairly simple. And then we are going to look at how you can verify hreflang implementation, HTML-lang implementation, as well as how you can use and analyze the data in different ways based on the reports and exports available in Sitebulb. So I'm going to jump straight into demonstration. If you're just joining us, don't worry, you haven't missed much. So to begin with, I'm just going to show you from the get-go how you set up a project that's going to be used for international auditing. So the first thing, you're going to create a new project, and you want to make sure to give this project a clear name that's going to help you identify it. Now, I've chosen to name this International Audit. However, obviously that might not be the only thing or the only goal that you're trying to achieve with your project or with your audit. So make sure to name it as appropriate. But in this case, I'm doing an audit specifically in order to look at the hreflang and HTML implementation on this website. So I'm going to name my project like that. Now, the only other setting you have to worry about here, which you can change in the next screen too, is your crawler. Do you need to use the HTML or the Chrome crawler? If your website kind of adds, removes, or modifies any content with JavaScript, you will probably want to use the Chrome crawler to make sure that your pages are fully rendered and you are seeing the correct data within Sitebulb. Now I'm going to click Save and Continue there and take you to single page analysis in the meantime. So if you're not familiar with the single page analysis, it's a tool that's available to you at the very top of your page here, whether you are on desktop or cloud. And with this single page analysis, you can do a number of things, including troubleshooting and figuring out whether your website uses JavaScript. So I'm going to let that load and come back to this screen, which is where we landed after clicking Save and Continue. Now, if you're setting up a simple international audit, literally all you have to do is come in here and enable that report. Once you've enabled the international report, Sitebulb will gather your international data and you will have those results in your finalized audit. So coming back to single page analysis, this has now loaded. And what you can do is go to the response versus render page and look at the DOM, comparing the HTTP response and the JavaScript rendered. So the JavaScript rendered, you would only get these results if you're crawling with the Chrome crawler, which is rendering JavaScript. So I can look at this page, scroll down, and I can see that there's some words, some headers, as well as some links added by JavaScript. Now, my actual hreflang implementation, it looks like is the same in the response version of the page. So I probably could get away crawling this website with HTML and still get accurate results. However, knowing that the website uses JavaScript, I'm just going to go with the Chrome crawler. So again, if you needed to adjust this at this point, you could do that from your crawler settings. Now, with default settings, you have enabled the international report. You could just go and start crawling from here. A few things I do want to point out, just to make sure that you're getting the correct data in your audit, is first, you want to crawl your whole website. So you want to make sure that Sitebulb is able to find all of the pages on your website. So by default, that Sitebulb is going to crawl your website by looking at your site URL, finding internal links, and following those internal links. You do have the option of adding additional sources for the crawling, like your XML sitemaps. This is also really important if your hreflang is set through sitemaps. So if your hreflang implementation is done through the XML sitemaps, you are going to want to enable this as a crawl source in order to make sure that that data is collected. Additionally, like I said, it can just be an extra crawl source to make sure that you are finding and crawling all of the pages on your website. The only other very important caveat is making sure that you crawl the whole site. So what I mean by that is that when we're looking at international websites, we often find that we have things like local directories. So instead of having this main URL that I used, you might be looking at crawling the English version of the site and use this URL as your start URL. Now, by default, Sitebulb is going to guide you towards crawling outside that directory, but you do have the option of disabling that and crawling only within the EN directory. Now, if you are trying to do international auditing, you need to make sure that you allow Sitebulb to crawl the whole site, because Sitebulb needs to crawl the URLs within these directories as well as URLs within other directories in order to be able to give you information on the reciprocation of your hreflangs. So it needs to crawl all of those URLs in order to look at whether they are pointing to each other, as you would expect them to with correct implementation. Now, taking all that into consideration, you've started your audit, and once that audit has finalized, you land here, your audit overview, and in the very left-hand menu, you can find your international report, which looks like this. Now, like every Sitebulb audit, the international report follows a very similar structure in terms of how it's laid out. What Sitebulb does here is report and check on both hreflang annotation and HTML-lang attributes. It follows every single alternate URL it found, irrespective of whether these are found in the HTTP header, in the HTML, or within an XML sitemap. So we'll find every single alternate URL and crawl them in order to find the hreflangs on those URLs and, like I said, check that reciprocation. Now, the metrics at the very top of your report show you URLs with hreflang, which is any HTML URL with at least one incoming or outgoing hreflang annotation. URLs missing hreflang, which is the opposite, so all HTML URLs with no incoming or outgoing hreflang annotations. And then you've got your unique hreflang, which is unique variations, including invalid ones. And then you've got your external hreflang, so external URLs found through an outgoing hreflang annotation. As you scroll down, you've got a series of charts that, again, are trying to, in very simple ways, illustrate the data that Sitebulb has found for you before you kind of like dive further into those big URL lists. So the first data table here is your URLs. So this is essentially an overview of the hreflang and HTML-lang coverage across the whole site. And you can see the URLs without hreflang and the URLs with. Like with every table and every graph on this report, you can click through to jump into a URL of that data. And you will see that Sitebulb is now curating your data columns to give you the most accurate information. So in this case, here are all of the URLs on your website that have hreflang. Here is the hreflang of those pages. And you also have information about whether or not the hreflangs are reciprocated. So the ones that were outgoing, Sitebulb went and crawled those URLs, those alternate URLs, and it checked whether they are returning within their own hreflang implementation a link towards this original URL. And again, just some extra information, you've got your language code and region. If we go back to the international report, there's a couple more bits of information here. So you've got your hosts. So Sitebulb will gather all of the host names found when crawling the alternate URLs outlined in your hreflang implementation. So that would be both external host names and subdomains. Going down, we've got your hreflang annotations and HTML-lang attributes. So this is the distribution of those hreflang and HTML-lang attributes across all URLs, including URLs with no annotations. You'll have a big chunk of not set here, which obviously coincides with this 13% not set URLs. You can hide that if you want, and you can see every single annotation found on the website, and same with HTML-lang. And then you've got your languages and regions, again, broken down in these graphs. Again, you can choose to click through to find all of the URLs for a specific hreflang annotation or for a specific locale or language region. Now, that's all good, but how are you going to find insights into what can be improved? Well, you can jump straight into analyzing the data. Sitebulb is designed to take you through this workflow where you can jump into your hints list and find those actions quicker. So the international hint reports include checks for the validity of your incoming and outgoing annotations. It will also flag up any broken or redirected hreflang links, incoming and outgoing annotations to no index and canonicalized URLs, invalid HTML-lang attributes, as well as mismatched hreflang and HTML-lang declarations. So does the language and region of those two declaration match if your pages has both? In order to find out more about all of the possible hints that Sitebulb might flag up, you can come into our hint explanation on the website, and you'll have a full list here of the hints and why they are important, what does the hint check, and how to resolve the issues. And obviously, you can also access that through the Learn More links within the report itself. But this is the quickest way of finding that information. Now, one thing you might notice is that, say, if I was looking at those URLs with invalid outgoing hreflang annotations, and I went to view URLs, Sitebulb is giving me this summary of the data. How many outgoing hreflang annotation does this URL have? And how many of those outgoing hreflangs are invalid? Now, if you wanted to dig in further about this URL, you can always view the URL details. Within the URL details, you have the same reports that you have in your audit overview, and you can click through to the international tab. And here you're going to find all of the international information for this specific page. So we can see that the hreflang and HTML-lang annotation both match and are valid. And I can see every single outgoing hreflang annotation, as well as every incoming hreflang annotation. Now, if you want to kind of dig in further and get that data in bulk, so look at that data for more URLs, obviously that would be very, very difficult to present within the tool. So the international report is one of the few reports in Sitebulb that actually provides you with some extra information within the export. So from your international audit overview, you can choose to export international data, which is going to give you an export like this. So let me just zoom in so it's a bit easier to see. It is an export with several pages, giving you a breakdown of the data that you are seeing in that international report, and allow you to kind of like drill down and analyze further. So for example, we were looking at that hint about invalid incoming annotations. And what you can do is come to that page in here. We've got our invalid incoming annotations. And this tab is going to contain every URL with invalid annotations alongside the respective URLs that are invalid. So you can see that this is the URL, and these are the 30 invalid annotations found on that URL. So as you scroll down, all of that data is in there, while there is no kind of like practical way of presenting that data to you within the tool. The other thing you're going to find in your export, so if we go to your hreflang geotargeting and your HTML language geotargeting, you'll see that again, you've got a summary of data here. So you've got the hreflang and where it is hosted. So in this case, the Beats website has those directories that we were looking at earlier. So everything has the same domain except for the Chinese version of the website, I believe. And you can see within those hreflang annotations whether they are valid, how many URLs contain them, and then whether there are redirected, broken, duplicates, etc. Not self-referenced hreflangs in there. But in order to go further into the data, you will want to come back to the export. So again, you've got your hreflang overview. When you land in here, you've got that hreflang annotation, the language, the region, the host, and that summary of valid, broken, redirected, etc. But then you've also got the cluster matrix tabs. So what this is showing you, I hope you can see. Let me know if you want me to zoom in any further. But what this is showing you is essentially every single URL that Sitebulb has found that has HTML lang annotation on the website. And then it's showing you every one of those location and language targeting regions, and whether that website has a variation within that region, right? So we can look at this product page here, and we can see that it's got variations for most of the locales. It doesn't have, for example, like a French African variation of that page. So you can kind of scroll through and have a good look at where those pages are, and whether you have a complete picture of those annotations across the whole website. And the same thing happens with the URL cluster matrix. So in this case, you're just having a yes/no matrix. In the URL cluster matrix, you get the actual URL. So you can see the actual variation of the URL across the different locations. So again, we're looking at that same product page, and you can see that we've got the AT, which Sitebulb found originally, I'm guessing, and then is kind of taking you through every single one of those locations, and you can see the specific URLs and like the directory that URL is held within, and where it isn't. So where there are those gaps within your implementation, whether because that product is not relevant to those locations or those languages, or simply because there's an actual gap that needs to be filled. So this is for you to kind of analyze and decide using this information. Okay, let's get back to our report. The final thing that we can look at here is the HTML templates. So again, like with most reports within Sitebulb, you're going to have an HTML templates tab within your report. Now, what this does is aggregate your hreflang implementation data by template. So you've got a general HTML templates report at the very top here. As Sitebulb crawls, it's essentially gathering your URLs by template, and you can kind of like see what it has identified for each template. Now, you could come here and look at these URLs and rename your template. So for example, template 6 here, I can see that it's clearly some sort of product template. So I can rename that, save it. And then when I go back to my international report and to the HTML templates, that template name has been saved. So I can very quickly identify, for example, if there are gaps, if there's broken implementation across a specific template. Where this becomes really, really relevant is when you're dealing with very big websites, because generally something like hreflang implementation is not going to be done manually. It will likely be done through some sort of plugin or through the template, JavaScript, etc. So you might find that the same kind of issues come up for a specific template. And this is a very quick way of identifying what those issues are and whether they are, like specifically affecting one group of pages. You can obviously view those URLs within Sitebulb like before, or you can export them in order to pass them on to your dev team, to your SEO team, whoever is relevant in this case. So that is more or less our international auditing with Sitebulb. We do have a little bit of extra time, so I'm going to give it 30 seconds, a minute. If anyone has any questions, now is your time to put them in the chat. Awesome. If no questions are coming up, I'm just going to quickly talk you through a couple more things. So if you want any more information on this, obviously I've gone through it quite quickly, but you will find a lot of what I've just talked you through in the help center. So within your tool, whether you're on desktop or cloud, you can open the help center, you can search for the international report, and you'll get all of this information that I just talked you through in here, as well as a breakdown of all of the graphs, the tables, the charts, the hints, and the export itself. The other thing that I wanted to point you towards is our training page. So you're going to find much more product training that we've done over the past 12 months on this page. So if this is your first training session, I would recommend you check it out. We touch on some of this stuff within the advanced Sitebulb training, which is like a really good introduction to a lot of these different reports and kind of insights like this about this export, which I think not everyone knows about if you're not, sitting there and reading all of the documentation. And finally, I wanted to point out our upcoming kind of batch of training that we're doing with SEO experts. So this is not specifically Sitebulb, this is more kind of general SEO training. We are having an upcoming advanced SEO training 3-part session series, which is specifically around AI, so technical SEO for the age of AI. And that's going to be like a really, really interesting series of events. So if you're interested in technical SEO and AI, definitely check that out and sign up through our website. Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much for attending, and look out for the next training session, which will be towards the end of November. Thank you.